Originally, I had planned on giving the speech, my 6-speech vocal variety on search and rescue several weeks ago. Even though my dog had died last week and I was doing search and rescue training with him, I still want to share my experience with you. At least a year before we had gotten our dog, my husband and I had been discussing it for some time. During this time, I had noticed one of my neighbors in the area walking their dog. They had a German Shepherd. I was really impressed with this dog. I could drive right by him and he wouldn't flinch. He'd stay very focused, trot right next to his owners. I mentioned this to my husband and said, how cool would it be to have a dog that well trained? He just said, you know, that's probably really expensive training. I kind of gave up on that idea at that time, thinking we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on training a dog or a whole lot of money training a dog. We're not really Rockefellers. We're kind of cheap. We'll do it on our own and just do the best that we can. In March of this year, my husband came home one evening and surprised me. Brought home this little German Shepherd puppy. He was about 6 weeks old at the time. We named him Diesel. When he was about 2-3 months old, I started walking him around the neighborhood, getting used to the neighborhood so he would know where he was in case he got lost. We started with 1 block, then 2 blocks, worked our way up to about 2 miles, about 2 to 3 times a week. One evening when we were out walking, I ran into these neighbors of mine, met them. They were the ones with the impressive dog, and they mentioned to me that they were involved in search and rescue. Whatever, search and rescue, They invited me to join them one day for a free seminar on a Saturday morning. I decided to drive Diesel down to Inglewood one morning on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m., thinking this will be maybe like an hour-long seminar. They teach you a few things, you go home and practice. This was at a park on the edge of the woods. This was not an hour-long seminar. We were training with the Peace River Search and Rescue team for about 3 hours that morning. This team trains every Saturday morning for 3 hours from 7 to 10 a.m. They have someone go out in the woods, creating a trail with their scent. They mark turns with ribbons on the bushes or the trees. They'll have an article of clothing at the beginning of the trail and sometimes along the way, and they're sitting at the end of the trail somewhere in the woods. Each team member take their dog and they follow the scent. They usually have someone flank that has a radio, and they communicate back with the home base, someone back at base, stating when the dog starts, when they end, and what their coordinates are at the end. The dogs have a number. So they'll say to home base, they'll say number 35 has started. And when they get to the end, they'll say number 39 has a code 5, which means they found the person. And the person back at home base will say, you can RTB, which means return to base. The dogs also practice with tunnels and hurdles back at the park. The team lays out these tunnels and hurdles. The tunnels are different sizes and different lengths. Some of them have curves in them, and some of them have like a sleeve on the end where the dog has to push through material. The hurdles have adjustable little bars where they can practice jumping over. And all these team members are all volunteers this whole time. Some of them are even snowbirds, and some of them live here year-round. When a dog first learns how to track, they first have to learn how to use their nose. When I first started with Diesel, I would lay out a 20-foot track, and every step that I took, I laid a little piece of either hot dog or a little piece of dog food that had a strong scent to it under my foot. I had a sock at the beginning of the trail and a sock at the end of the trail. He would wear this simple little strap harness that I would move his leash to from his collar right when we were about to start tracking. That indicates what he's about to do, so he knows what to do. I would tell him to sit, at the beginning of the trail, and I'd tell him bind. At first, when we first started learning, I would take my finger to his nose and bring it down to the sock and the first piece of food and tell him find. Once he found that first piece of food, you tell him good find. Then you take your finger, drag it along the ground from the first piece of food to the second piece of food and tell him find. When he found the second piece of food, you tell him good find. After a few pieces of food, he didn't need my finger anymore. He kind of figured it out. But you still continue saying find, good find. When you get to the end, you get them all excited. You tell them, good boy, good find. That way, they're having fun. They're happy to track. It's all positive reinforcement. When we work on the tunnels, it wasn't really work, of course. It's like a little dog's playground out there. They're all having fun. We'd practice on the tunnels. We'd start at the beginning, and I'd tell him, in. I'd run to the end, calling his name, saying, Diesel, come on. When I'd get to the end, I'd see him coming out. He looked like a little kid with a smile on his face, and his tail wagging behind him. He's having fun. When he comes out, I'd tell him, good boy, and I'd give him a piece of food. We started throwing in 90-degree turns into his trail. We'd also practice at home. When we practiced at home, a lot of times friends and family would just kind of stop by our house, and my husband would say to me, show him what he can do, show him what he can do, lay a trail. All right, all right. When we started with search and rescue training, we noticed a big difference in Diesel. He was much more obedient, much more well-behaved, didn't chew up the furniture or anything. He was a happier puppy, which made our home happier. I have much more appreciation for search and rescue teams now, and I really hope to start getting back to training with the Peace River Search and Rescue Team again soon.